The eagle had lived on the mountain long enough to forget where the air ended and it began. The sky was its territory, the thin light its only companion. Below, the world lay folded, valleys, rivers, forests, all quiet from this height, as if time itself moved slower here. Each morning, before the sun reached the peaks, the eagle would leave its perch and circle the cliffs. The air was cold, sharp, clean enough to sting. It rose and fell with the currents it knew by heart, wings adjusting with the precision of instinct rather than thought. But lately, something had changed. The mountain was too quiet. The wind, once alive with motion and sound, had grown dull. No smaller birds followed its path. No herds moved below. Even the streams that once reflected the sky had thinned to silver scars in the rock. The eagle flew lower that day, tracing the line of a frozen ridge. The light there was strange, not bright, not dim, just steady. It caught on a patch of ice clinging to a dark pool near the base. The water was still enough to hold the sky. It landed beside it. The surface didn't move. The eagle tilted its head, watching. Its reflection looked back, sharp eyes, curved beak, feathers darkened by dust and time. For a moment, it didn't recognize itself. The reflection looked older, heavier, as if the mountain had imprinted its years upon the bird's image. The eagle stepped closer. The water rippled. The reflection fractured into 1,000 shifting shapes. Sky, stone, shadow, the brief ghost of another face it couldn't name. The bird froze, waiting for the stillness to return. When it did, the reflection was different again. Smaller, quieter, almost fading. It stared for a long time. There was no movement, no threat, no prey, no wind. Just the slow rise and fall of its own chest and the whisper of melting ice at the pool's edge. From somewhere high above, a piece of snow broke free and tumbled down the slope, landing near the water with a dull, hollow sound. The eagle didn't move. Its eyes stayed on the reflection, its own shape blurred now by the spreading ripples. And for the first time, it looked away first. The mountain seemed to notice. The light shifted slightly, clouds moving across its face. The shadow of the peak stretched longer, darker, falling across the bird and the pool. The eagle turned its gaze upward, slow, deliberate. The sky was vast but empty. No call, no cry, not even the sound of wind. Just silence pressed between stone and cloud. It spread its wings and took flight again, but not with the power it once had. The air resisted. The climb felt heavier. Each movement required more will than instinct. When it reached the ledge where it had nested for years, the eagle stopped and looked back down. From this height, the pool was a silver speck, the mountain's shadow slicing through it. The reflection was gone. The eagle stood there as the first light touched the peak. The sun was low, slow, almost hesitant. It brushed the rock, warming it just enough to make the frost release a faint mist. The mountain glowed briefly, not with pride, but with exhaustion. The eagle blinked against the glare, its vision splitting the horizon into light and stone. It bowed its head slightly, not from submission but from recognition, a gesture towards something larger and quieter than itself. The mountain didn't move, but in that small, trembling shift of air, it seemed to lower its gaze, as if even the oldest thing in the world could still feel the weight of being seen. And high above the valley, the echo that should have followed never came. The mountain had forgotten how to answer. By the next dawn, the eagle had flown higher than it had in years. The air there was thinner than thought. Each breath felt like glass, cutting through its lungs, each wing beat a conversation with exhaustion. The mountain below stretched vast and unmoving, its gray shoulders scarred by centuries of weather. The wind, once familiar, had changed. It came in uneven bursts, no longer a rhythm but a hesitation, a remnant of something that used to flow. The eagle tilted its wings, searching for the old currents, the invisible paths that had always carried it without effort. None came. It glided lower, tracing the ridges where the last of the snow still clung. The silence followed, heavier than air, Below, the mountain's face was littered with broken stone, dry streams, the remains of trees that had grown where even the cold once refused them. The eagle circled above it all, searching not for prey, but for motion, anything that could prove the world hadn't stopped breathing. Then it saw it. Movement. At first, it thought it was a shadow cast by the clouds, but the shape was too small, too steady. A man climbing, alone. The eagle tilted its wings and drifted closer, silent. The man moved with effort, boots slipping on the loose shale. His coat was torn, one sleeve missing. Each step looked like memory rather than strength. He stopped often, resting his hand against the stone as though listening. His face was turned upward, not toward the sky, but toward something unseen, as if trying to find the edge of sound itself. The eagle watched from above. The man's breath came in clouds that dissolved almost instantly. When he stumbled, the bird dipped lower, following his slow progress up a narrow ridge. The man reached a small plateau where a cairn of rocks stood, not tall, but deliberate. He knelt before it, touching the stones with a care that belonged to reverence. The eagle landed on a ledge nearby, folding its wings. Neither moved for a long time. The wind pressed faintly at their backs, carrying dust instead of snow. It made a low sound as it passed through the hollow of the rocks. Not quite a whistle, not quite a voice. The man spoke, though his voice barely carried. "I thought you'd still be here." The eagle's head turned sharply, but the man wasn't looking at it. His eyes were fixed on the cairn. "Did you ever hear it?" he murmured. "That the wind, when it still had a name?" His words vanished in the thin air. The eagle blinked once, slow, golden eyes unblinking against the glare. The man leaned back, his gaze finally lifting to the sky. "I used to think the mountain never changed, but I see now it's just tired." He smiled faintly, a gesture of resignation, not hope. "Guess we both are." The eagle spread its wings, feeling the pull of the air, that faint hum beneath gravity. For a heartbeat, it hovered there, motionless, suspended between the man and the peak. Then it lifted off. The wind caught beneath it, awkward but real. As the bird rose, it carried the dust and loose snow upward, spinning small eddies that shimmered briefly in the light. The man shielded his eyes, watching. For the first time in years, the mountain sounded alive. Not loud, not clear, but present. The soft roar of air, finding its path again through stone. The eagle climbed higher, riding the uneven currents until the air steadied. Below, the man was just a dark figure against the pale slope, head tilted upward, mouth moving in words the wind carried away before they were heard. When the bird reached the summit ridge, it turned once more toward the valley. The pool where it had seen its reflection was gone, buried beneath meltwater and shadow. But in the distance, the air shimmered faintly, as though remembering how to echo. The eagle let out a cry, short, raw, carried not by strength but by necessity. The sound bounced once against the cliff, fractured, and fell silent. But something shifted in the stillness that followed. A faint stirring in the wind, a whisper that rose and died but did not vanish completely. It wasn't an answer. Not yet, but it was proof that the mountain could still listen. The eagle turned its head toward the soundless peaks, eyes catching the last thin thread of light before dusk. Then it folded its wings and dove into the valley below, into the silence that was learning, slowly, to breathe again. By the time the eagle returned to the upper cliffs, the sun had already fallen behind the western ridge. The light that remained was thin and gold, scattered through the haze that hung above the valley like memory refusing to fade. The air trembled faintly, full of dust and distance. The eagle landed on a ledge it hadn't touched in years, a place where the rock still bore the faint imprint of talons long gone. Below, the wind scraped softly against the mountain's face, shaping the same song it had been trying to remember since morning. The bird's wings hung open for a while before folding in, each movement slow, deliberate. It stood there in silence, its shadow long against the rock. The mountain loomed around it, immense and still, but no longer indifferent. Something had changed. The silence felt inhabited now, not alive, but aware. Far below, the man was gone. The cairn remained small against the vast slope, the stones still warm from his hands. A single feather, one torn loose during the eagle's last ascent, had fallen near it, caught between two rocks. The wind touched it once, then again, but it did not move. The eagle watched as the first stars appeared above the horizon. The sky here was never dark. It was too high, too thin. Light lingered even when the sun was gone, trapped in the cold. For a long time, the bird didn't move. Its eyes followed the slow turning of the stars, the slow breathing of the earth. Every so often, it shifted its claws, testing the edge of the ledge as if making sure it was still real. The mountain, for its part, said nothing. But somewhere deep within its stone, water trickled. A small sound nearly lost, but constant. It echoed faintly through the hollow veins of the rock, a pulse so old it might have been mistaken for silence itself. The eagle tilted its head, listening. Then, slowly, it began to hum a low sound in its throat. Not a cry, not a call, but something quieter, a tone of recognition maybe, or gratitude. The wind carried it downward. When it reached the valley floor, it passed over the cairn, stirring the small feather until it finally lifted. It spun once, twice, then drifted out into the open, rising higher with every gust. From the ledge, the eagle watched it climb. It followed the feather with its eyes, tracing its uneven path through the air until it vanished into the light above. The mountain trembled faintly, not from movement, but from weight. The weight of everything that had stayed still too long. And then, for the first time in many years, a small piece of the upper ridge broke loose. It fell slowly, bouncing from ledge to ledge, scattering a rain of dust and stone. The sound it made was deep, resonant, an echo finally answering itself. The eagle didn't flinch. It simply spread its wings, testing the air. The new wind that rose through the gorge was rough, uncertain, but it was wind again. Real, moving, alive. The bird stepped forward, claws curling over the rock, and leapt. The first few beats were hard. The air resisted, thin and heavy, with the weight of its own stillness. But then the mountain released it, a sudden clean lift, as if the world had remembered the shape of flight. The eagle climbed in wide circles, the wind finding its rhythm beneath its wings. It rose past the broken ridge, past the last patch of snow, past the light that clung to the mountain's shoulders. From above, the peak looked smaller now, not diminished, just humbled. The bird circled once more, then turned toward the horizon. The air shimmered faintly, carrying the echo of stone, the whisper of wind rediscovering its name. And as it vanished into the fading gold, the mountain lowered its gaze once again, not in defeat, but in respect. For in that moment, it understood. Even the oldest stone must someday let go of what it was holding, so that something else might remember how to rise. Morning came thin and sharp, the kind of light that did not warm but revealed. The wind had calmed to a low hum, the air so clear it seemed to ring. The eagle had flown through the night, its wings cutting lines between stars, its body remembering paths the mountain had long forgotten. By dawn, it had returned, not to the highest ridge, but lower, where the cliffs met the world of soil and thin grass. The air here was thicker, almost heavy, filled with scents it hadn't known in years. Pine, wet stone, the faint sweetness of thawing earth. The eagle landed on a fractured boulder near the base of the slope. Around it, the remnants of an old forest struggled upward, twisted trunks, bark silvered with frost, roots gripping the bones of the mountain like memory refusing to let go. Below, the valley opened wide and silent. A river ran through it, narrow now, but alive. The water's surface shone with early light, trembling as if remembering movement. The eagle stared at it for a long time. It had seen this river before, though not like this. It had been fuller once, strong enough to carve sound into stone. Now it whispered. The eagle lowered its head and drank. The cold water hit its throat like glass. For a moment, the world around it seemed to pause. The reflection in the river's surface was thin and trembling, not the proud shadow it once had been, but something softer, humbled. Far above, a small sound broke the stillness. A piece of ice detached from a ledge and shattered on the rocks below. The echo rolled down the mountain, hollow and deep. The eagle looked up, following it with its eyes, but the sound faded before it reached the ground. It had been the mountain's voice once, strong, unyielding, commanding. Now it sounded like breath leaving a body. The eagle spread its wings, testing the wind. It didn't rise immediately. Instead, it waited, feeling the faint vibration of air against its feathers. The current was returning, cautious, uneven, but real. The sky above shimmered faintly, like it too was stretching after a long sleep. Then came movement, a flicker at the edge of vision. The eagle turned sharply. Far across the valley, another shape moved, small but unmistakable. Another eagle, gliding low above the trees. It wasn't close enough to be certain, but the pattern was right. The slow, deliberate motion of wings that knew how to measure silence. The eagle let out a low cry, a sound roughened by disuse. The air carried it unevenly, scattering it across the cliffs. For a moment, nothing answered. Then, faintly, a reply. It wasn't strong, but it was there. The eagle tilted its head toward the sound, its eyes narrowing against the light. The world seemed to expand again, stretching open between stone and sky. The echo of the second call bounced between the cliffs, broke apart, and returned softer. No longer two voices, but one shared. The eagle lifted from the rock. The wind caught it immediately, pushing upward in a single, clean motion. It climbed higher, past the low mist that had settled in the trees, past the place where the light fractured into thin gold lines. From above, the world looked different. The river gleamed. The ridges no longer seemed dead. Even the shadows had depth again. The second eagle appeared at the far end of the valley, circling once before turning toward the mountain. Their paths crossed without touching, a slow, spiraling dance that drew the air between them into motion. Below, the mountain shifted in light. The first snowmelt trickled through new cracks, carrying the echoes of their wings through its hollowed heart. The sky deepened, turning from pale to vast. The eagle cried out again, this time not to summon, not to command, but to confirm. The sound rose and fell, carried by wind that finally remembered how to move. The mountain did not speak. It simply stood, immense and unmoving, its face softened by the weight of the moment. The shadow it cast shortened. The light crawled up its slopes, gentle, deliberate, forgiving. And when the eagle passed once more over the ridge, where it had once stared into the still pool, there was no reflection, only movement, sky bending against wing, wind shaping sound, silence reshaping itself into something alive. From the ground below, if anyone had been there to see, it would have looked like two streaks of shadow written briefly across the sky, not rising, not falling, just existing in the space where the mountain finally lowered its gaze, not from defeat, but from awe. And as the day broke fully, the wind carried the last echo of their flight across the valley, not as noise, but as memory, pressed into stone. The silence that followed was not absence. It was peace.